Welcome to Blueprint Boost for Contractors, the podcast that's your go-to source for unlocking the secrets to successful marketing, gaining valuable insights, and growing your contracting business with less stress. Your host is David Brooks, and he's thrilled to be your guide on this journey. As a seasoned expert in the contracting industry, David understands the challenges you face. That's why each episode is crafted to provide you with actionable strategies and proven blueprints to boost your business to new heights.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the latest episode of the podcast. I'm your host, David Brooks. And for this episode of the podcast, we do have another guest with us, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Hi, David. I'm Chris Scully, and I'm a business consultant, coach. Kind of the terms are interchangeable for me. And I work with business owners in the construction industry in the main. So general contractors and say plumbers, electricians, et cetera, anybody in the building trades. And the my main purpose for doing what I do is I want to see my clients have a better quality of life, a more prosperous life, while doing what they do best. And so I help my clients basically run their businesses better so they're making a good living and they have the time to spend with their families and pursue whatever other interests they might have.
Excellent. Well, nice to be able to have you on as a guest. And could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'll start with the fact that pretty much my whole life I have been wherever I went, I would end up in management fairly quickly. And so I started to gain a great deal of knowledge, understanding of managing, leading, things like that. But that doesn't really explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's kind of a longer story, but it's worth telling because it really is the reason I do what I do. And it started with when I was in my teens. My father was a partner in a restaurant. He really liked having that business. And then at one point, they had a large fire in the kitchen, practically gutted the kitchen. So they couldn't operate until the building was restored and back to a state where they could use it. The problem was that in that particular instance, they didn't have the right insurance. Their insurance covered the fire damage, but it didn't cover the loss of income. And as a result, my parents ended up having to go through bankruptcy, just barely were able to keep the house due to the fact that their bankruptcy attorney was very good. And I think that's one of the things that sparked my passion for helping business owners, because so often people will get into a business that because they're good at their profession. You know, they're a good electrician, they're a good plumber, they've spent, I don't know, 12 years becoming a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, but they don't really know business. And as a result, you don't know what you don't know. As in the case of my father, he didn't know he needed business interruption insurance. He also, and I don't know if his insurance agent tried to sell it to him or didn't. I was a little bit too young and uninvolved in the business to know that information, but it kind of illustrates for me, and it's something that stuck with me in terms of business owners to be successful need someone who can help them navigate things that they may not expect, may not even know to look for, things like that. And that's part of the value of coaching in general. Um, Anybody who's achieved great things in life has had a coach at some point. And and I like to fill that role with people who who want to grow their businesses, who have maybe goals of building a legacy for their families. That's a common goal that my clients have, and so that's that. And then I've also done quite a bit of management training. I think last estimate, something like 300 hours of management training, and it's not just study in a classroom, but also really working over the application of the principles that I learned. And I've consulted people in 18 different industries using basically the same management principles. So I know that they work and they work in any business, which gives me the confidence to work with anybody and know that I can tell them, look, if you just do what I'm advising you to do, you'll get results because I've gotten these same results with other people. And that's a big deal for me is knowing that I can actually help people grow their business and achieve their personal goals, their dreams, that kind of thing.
And that's amazing. Being able to have that system in place to be able to kind of help your clients be able to achieve that growth and being able to move forward along the right path.
Hmm.
Uh, and like you said, people need coaches, right? When you look at if you're a sports fan and you look at successful teams, like successful teams are usually headed up by what? A good coach.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
a good coach is crucial. A good coach is, right? Are
Yeah.
are crucial to success.
Yeah. And most people don't think about just how many people as business owners you actually need on your team. And I'm talking about not just your employees and people that are helping you service your customers or produce your products, but just to be successful, you need an attorney, you need an accountant, you should have a financial advisor, you should have a coach, um, somebody who's familiar with human resources because that's a whole potential minefield of problems if you don't have some guidance there. And that's a very specific niche of people that can help with that. Um, and if you're missing one of those parts, it's very hard to succeed. So I look at it like, business is a team sport. Even if you're a one-man band in your business right now, you still need that team of professionals around you to who give you good advice that hopefully you follow, and and it helps you to grow your business. It helps you to succeed.
Yes, and being able to follow that advice, right, is one thing to be able to get it, and to be able to have someone guide you and tell you, but it's another thing of actually taking the positive steps to go ahead and implement that.
Yes. And that goes to, coachability, accountability, things like that. And my approach to that is simply I make sure that we establish some agreements right at the beginning of the relationship. I often tell my clients that um, if there's a question, a problem, a disagreement with something I'm asking them to do, tell me right away so we can iron it out. Don't leave the call saying, okay, I got it, I'll do it, or whatever, while you still have disagreements or you still don't quite understand, because usually what happens is you don't do it. Um, if you fully understand what you're supposed to do, you fully understand the benefit of the activity that you're being advised to do. Typically, somebody who wants to grow or has goals that they want to achieve will then go ahead and do that. But if they don't understand it or if there's some disagreement with it, then yeah, they probably won't. Um, and there's also the discipline of a coach providing accountability. That's why, it's somebody mentioned this to me. I was talking to them during the week, and I was talking about accountability, and they immediately said, "Oh yeah, well that's why I have a trainer and I don't just have a gym subscription," because there's a difference between the two. When you have a personal trainer, that personal trainer is going to tell you what you should be doing. He's going to make sure you're doing it the right way, and they're going to hold you accountable for actually working out and doing what you're supposed to do. And that's what a good coach does as well.
Yeah, accountability is so crucially important of being able to hold a person accountable for carrying and following out things on their end, because the relationship can't be successful if it isn't two sides willing to meet together and establish that agreement. Like you said, establishing it up front makes things clear. You have definition, and then you have a goal and a path for being able to move things forward.
Right. Absolutely. One of the things that I've found over time working with clients is that goal is one of the most important ingredients to success in a coaching relationship. If a person doesn't have goals that are sufficiently motivating, they're not going to want to make changes. And if their goals, and if they don't have goals for their team that are also motivating for the team, then the team might resist those changes as well. And very often that that's where I start with a relationship with a client is let's really clarify these goals. And I might ask a question like, well, okay, well, what gets you up in the morning? What makes you want to come to work every day? What is that? And start clarifying those points with the client. And it's amazing because it's usually not, I want to make a lot of money.
Mm.
Money is a pretty meh kind of uh kind of a thing when it comes to a goal, right? Because it's usually not an end in itself. It's something that you get as a result of doing something for somebody. I mean, if you think about it, any business, you provide a product or a service to your customers for which they're paying you money.
Mhm.
You don't just create money out of thin air, number one. So you have to have some goal in terms of what types of growth you might want in your business or what you're going to do with that money that you want to make.
Mhm.
I had a client, one of the clients I work with, when I first sat down with him, he told me, "Yeah, I'm not really interested in making much more money." And as we were talking, and he started talking about his family and his involvement with his church and things like that, I said, "All right, so let me ask you this. So you said you don't really want to make more money, but if you made more money, what would that mean to your family? What would that mean to your church if
Mhm.
you had the financial resources to do whatever was needed or wanted? What kind of difference would that make?" And it was really interesting because he really paused and it sunk in that, oh yeah, he could do a lot more and he could provide better for his family, more security, etc., if he actually focused on growing his business.
Mhm.
And that led to a whole other conversation that ultimately he does what he does to help his clients, but by growing his business, he can also help his community and help his family at the same time. And very often that's the type of conversation that I'll have with people who might start out with, well, I'm not really sure what my goal is because, yeah, I don't really want to grow. They've become comfortable. They've become maybe a little bit complacent. And then when I start digging into what's important to them, what makes that person tick, then we can actually formulate a goal that actually gets them excited. And that's when the fun starts
Mhm.
because then we can start implementing changes in the business that get results, and he's motivated to do that because he's got a goal that makes him want to change what he's doing.
And having that goal and making someone want to change what they're doing uh, is so important in the sense of because just human nature, you're sometimes stuck in your ways, right? You have your system of your processes and philosophy and your ways about going about doing your day to day or your ebb and flow, and then
Hmm.
interrupting that, with something new or something new to implement is a huge change, right?
Yeah, and people who've become comfortable, especially, when you start talking to them about change, it gets scary because, well, that's uncomfortable. And that's another thing that a coach does for somebody is they can help you through that process, through that sort of fear of change. And very often what I do is I keep leveraging that goal over and over and over again. Just by, it's almost too simple in a way, but so client has a goal and they're uncomfortable with a change. I go, well, okay, so it's uncomfortable, but what about this goal here? Is that something you really want to achieve? Yeah, yeah, I want to achieve it. Okay, good. So we're going to have to take some uncomfortable steps to get there, and just keep your eye on that goal and don't worry about how comfortable or uncomfortable it is to get to the goal, because if you get to the goal, then it's worth it.
Mhm. And it's like you said, if you get to the goal, then it makes it all the much more worthwhile, right? You have something that you're setting out to accomplish, you're setting out to achieve. And yes, there's going to be some moments there where, it may be, oh, like, but, you're getting through the process, you're working through it. And it's just, as we go back to the coach and sports analogy, it's like, it's not all good during the season, right? It's not all
Nope,
just
nope.
a perfect straight through. It's adversity that you have to
O-
overcome.
Only one team has ever had it all good from beginning to end the entire season, in at least in professional sports,
Yeah.
which was the 72 Dolphins.
Yep.
But and that's but what's interesting about that, when on the subject of goals, is that when somebody does achieve a goal, it's extremely important that they set a new one right away. Because what happens is you achieve the goal, now what?
Mhm.
What am I doing? What am I working for? What am I working toward? I've had clients in the past who had a goal of, because they'd spent, in some cases, 20 plus years in their business, and they've worked 60, 70 hours a week in the business, and they're getting a little tired, and what they really want is for, to set the business up so that they can come and go as they please, but the business will continue to run, and that then gives them time to spend with their families or whatever. And usually it's spend time with the family is the thing that they want. They want to have their business and they want to have their profitability and a life too. And that's not mutually exclusive. You can set up a business to run that way. But when you do, if that business owner doesn't have a new goal, then what happens is they need something to do. They're not going to sit idle. So what they're going to do is they're going to go into their business and they're going to create problems for them to solve. So they have something to do, which can really mess up all the work that you did to get them to that point. So it's vital, in my experience, to always ensure that the business owner is working toward a goal, no matter what. We find a goal that person can work toward. even if they feel they've achieved everything they wanted to achieve in their business. That's fine. Because if they're not working toward a goal, they're going to create problems.
And that's so true. When you said, if you sunset a goal, you accomplish it. So important to put the next goal up, right? Is you shouldn't become just complacent because you accomplish one or two goals and supposed to be it. It's always another level, it's always another goal, it's always something to keep striving for and going after. And I feel like the businesses and the owners that acknowledge that and see that vision are the ones that have the most growth potential, the mindset of, here's what I want to set out to accomplish. Even initially, here's my goal, but then, man, I made it past my goal, and then it's opened up new areas and opportunities for me that I never even knew could be possible. But
Right.
because you went above and beyond, right? You're able to see that.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's worth mentioning as well that there's a difference between the business owner and their personal goals versus a goal for an organization. Um, and probably the best way to illustrate that is uh, I have a pretty good track record of helping people who are ready to retire exit their businesses in a very smooth and productive way. And there's a lot of parts to that, and it's very tailored to each business. But there's two common denominators. One is that group goal is important because your employees aren't going to rally behind the idea of you retiring and leaving and maybe selling your business or what. It's just not going to happen. Okay, that's not going to. If you were an employee of a company, that's not going to motivate you in any way, shape, or form, right? So you can't expect your employees to be motivated by that. So what you need to do is you need to actually create goals for the group that preferably are very long term, almost unattainable in a way, but still sufficiently creative and motivating so that people can actually get behind working toward that goal. Now, you could have, for example, uh, well, I'll tell you one of my goals is to improve entire industries by getting clients running their businesses better and better and having them then go out and influence their sector of their industry so that it uplifts an entire industry. Now, that's a huge goal. That's something that I may never achieve in my lifetime, but as an organization, because an organization can live past the life of its founder, well, then that goal is theoretically attainable at some point in the future if everybody kept working on it. And that's an example of a goal that you could create for a business that is almost indefinite in terms of how long a business could work toward that goal. Eventually, it would have an end. You could literally go, okay, good. So, maybe we've serviced everybody in a particular industry. I don't know how you would ever end up doing that, but in theory, it could be done. Well, then then a new goal would have to be set. But until you get to that point, you've got lots of room, right? And an example for a small business, let's say um, a construction company might be, to provide high quality housing at the most affordable price for our clients. Let's say they're a home builder, and to be the leader in the industry in terms of building homes and providing housing for our community. That could be a goal. Kind of clumsy wording because I'm doing it off the cuff, but it's again, it's illustrative of an organizational goal that you can then use with new hires to keep them motivated as part of the team and get them integrated into the team. You could use it with your existing employees and keep them focused on the big picture, things like that. As opposed to maybe I, as the business owner of that company, my goal is to build my business to the point of having systems in place that allow me to uh, achieve that goal, but also to have time to spend with my grandchildren or uh, to do more volunteer work or something like that. That's a personal goal, but it's also aligns with that organizational goal. And that's a bit of an art to get that done, but it's so important for a business owner to be able to succeed across the boards.
And that's, being able to have that success and being able to succeed uh has to be at the forefront, right? Because when you're going down this path and you're setting up these processes and you're setting up these goals, right? The goal is to succeed. The goal is not to fail.
Right.
Uh and you have to, keep having that in your mind of, I want to succeed. I'm not going to fail, right? This is how I'm going to move things forward.
Right. And for me, it's really important to keep in mind when I speak to people that people define success in different ways. Um, Many define it by the size of their bank account or the brand of car they drive or the kind of house they live in or the neighborhood they live in or whatever. And that's okay. That's that person's definition of success. It's very monetary. It's very much about living the good life. And hey, I'm all for that if that's what the client wants. Other people, they don't care about that stuff. They care about having an impact on their community and being able to support causes that are important to them. And being a successful business owner gives them the wherewithal and the freedom to do that. Well, that's a great way for them to define success. And I can help you can help them with that too. It, the trap that sometimes people fall into is thinking that success has to be defined in a certain way. It doesn't. It's what do you want to achieve, and does achieving that thing make you feel like you're successful? If the answer to that is yes, then just go for achieving that thing, whatever that might be. I've had clients that, they don't want to, they wanted to grow their business up to a certain point. They didn't want to get much bigger than that. But getting it to that point would allow them to do other things that they wanted to do with their families, with their communities, things like that. And that would make them happy. And I'm happy to help them achieve that goal. The funny thing is that people sometimes don't realize that no matter where you are in business, no matter what town you're in, no matter what your industry is, that growth is necessary. If you look at just the last 5 years, how much has gas gone up? How much have groceries gone up? How much has just our overall cost of living, no matter where you live in the country, it's gone up, right? And you can't always just raise prices as costs go up because there are certain market pressures that are going to prevent you from, say, for example, charging double what everybody else charges for the same product or service. it gets hard to justify at a certain point. So you have to have that balance of your pricing being adequate to be profitable, but you also have to keep growing the business in order to maintain the ability of that business to continue to survive despite changes in economic conditions. If you stay the same, like a flat level,
Mhm.
eventually you're dead.
Yep.
Inflation alone will kill you.
Mhm.
So growth is a really important factor, but the that has to do with the survival of the business and the ability of that business owner to achieve those goals. It's just a factor that has to be taken into account as you're working toward those goals. Are you growing sufficiently to achieve what you want to achieve?
And like you said, being able to achieve what you want to achieve, but is also, has to be in the forefront of your mind that, inflation does happen.
Hmm.
Things get more expensive, that materials, supplies, different pieces of equipment that you need for your team, what it costs to keep the lights running in the building, like everything just goes up, and you have to be willing to grow some to offset those costs.
Yeah, and I've coached people in services businesses that um they'd say things like, it used to be so much easier, or I the last few years have been much more of a financial struggle, blah blah blah, and I'd at some point I'd get the conversation would get to, well, just out of curiosity, when was the last time you raised your prices? Uh, Maybe 10 years ago. Okay, well, how much does it cost? Does it cost you the same to deliver your services to your customers as it did 10 years ago? Well, no. Okay, so do you think maybe you should raise your prices? We have these conversations because honestly, people, in my experience, um, want to do the right thing, the majority of people. Um, and yet, and they feel that raising prices, might not be popular with their customers or whatever, but not raising them when they should be raised and not growing when you need to, in order to keep up with those inflationary pressures is actually going to hurt your customers in the long run. Because if you're not there to deliver that service, then what? Who does? Is the person that's left over in the industry that does manage to survive when you didn't, are they really as good as or better than you, or were they just economically a little smarter? And that's a question that's a conversation that's always difficult to have with business owners in terms of how they price their products and services, and when should you raise prices, and by how much, and how do you navigate those waters, because it can be very emotional.
Yeah, it's it could be a very touchy thing, and it also takes, the business owner to reflect of, hey, look, I haven't touched my prices in, like you said, 10 years or so, or quite a number of years. And it's like, as things go up, you have to be willing to raise your prices to be able to offset your costs, because if not, you're just going to keep eating uh, cost out of your own pocket, and you're doing jobs, and and you're barely breaking even, or you're just, you're back at square one,
Right,
just because your pricing is all wrong.
right. It's so true. And when it comes to people in construction, there's also uh, a lot of other moving parts that they have to take into account that can also affect their profitability. Um, Not the least of which is supply chain issues, the office work side of it, which most everybody that I know that's ever started any kind of a construction business hates to do, because they want to be out there running circuits or, building a house or whatever it is, whatever their specific trade might be, and they don't really want to be in an office doing paperwork. Yet, if you don't do that paperwork, you don't get paid, you don't pay bills, and there's all of that. And one of the things that I think is really critical to success with somebody who's a coach who's giving you advice is the ability and willingness to ask for and accept help. It's not uncommon for people to have an attitude of, I'll figure it out myself, which that's fine if you're able to figure it out and you're able to implement those things and you can do it consistently, great. But in reality, the majority of people who have a small business don't really figure it all out. And which is one of the reasons why there's such a high failure rate of small businesses in this country is that people go into business because I mentioned this before, they're good at their profession and they think they could make a business out of it and they can make a lot of money or whatever. And then they start running into all the things that they don't know. And they get to a point where they're going to max out because they've hit the limit of their knowledge and their management skill. And if they're willing to seek out help and they have the humility to know that they don't know, then they can break through that ceiling and they can continue to grow. They can survive for quite a long time. But very often that willingness to seek help is a hard one for people to do. And there's no shame in knowing that you don't know. In fact, that's a very high level of self-awareness if you give that a little thought. I know I don't know, and I know I need help. Most people don't have that level of self-awareness where they are able to recognize that and then act on it.
Yes, they have to be able to, like I said, act on it is really the key. The key phrase and mover there is, finally knowing, finally getting that clarity, finally getting that picture in your mind, and then saying, okay, what am I going to do about it, right? What am I going to change to be able to achieve my goals, to be able to move things forward, to be able to change my processes?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's a challenge for sure. Um, but if you can get a coach who can work with you, who will guide you through that process, it actually is much easier than most people realize because at least for me as a coach, I am going to insist that my clients get things done, but I'm not going to push them harder than it makes sense. In other words, the key is implementation. It's not teaching people a bunch of stuff. If you wanted to learn a bunch of stuff, there's hundreds of books. Just, go to Amazon, go to your local bookstore, whatever. You're going to find all kinds of books on business. Those books sell, and yet, and I've spoken to people, they've read this book, they've read that book, and they'll tell me that. And I say, okay, good. Well, how much of it did you actually implement? And then that becomes the key point. Like you said, taking action is the key phrase in all of this. It's the difference between knowing about and actually successfully using the information.
And like I said, using that information, and like I said, anybody could go out and get a book, and have a book on something, but it's what do you do with the information that you're getting? A lot of times just, oh, I read this and this was some really good insights, and it's like, but I never got around to implementing it, right? I
Right.
never got around to going about the change. I've acknowledged it, and I think it's good. I think the perspective is clear in my mind, but I don't actually go out and say, okay, here's what I'm going to sit down and do to be able to actually take actionable steps toward moving things in the right direction.
Right. And a lot of us, unfortunately, don't realize that repetition is part of it. Um, I I always use this analogy with a client who is at a point where they're starting to complain about how often they have to repeat things to their employees. And they grumble, why don't they just get it the first time? Right? And I go, look, so first of all, and I've had, many times where I've had to have a client repeat a certain education step, whether it's a seminar or workshop or study this thing or that more than once so that they are actually it actually fully sinks in and they can apply it. But then I always say this, like you were a kid, right? At some point in your life, kind of joking, but there's a point to it. Um, well, how many times did your parents have to tell you to brush your teeth before you actually started doing it without being told and did it the right way? And usually the answer is like hundreds, probably,
Yeah, right.
right?
Right.
And but that's part of training because your parents, in telling you that over and over and over again, were working to build a habit. And that's not done by just explaining it once, doing it once, and you can't form a habit. You can't form um, a good system in a business with here's how it works, everybody. And then I'm going to walk away and then you guys are going to do it. It just doesn't work that way. You have to repeat it. And that repetition is what makes it take hold. And that's a big part of coaching. And you have to, uh, I found that if I don't work with a client on something until they've really developed the habit that is going to carry them forward, then I need to keep working with them on that thing. That doesn't mean, for example, I'm going to stick to one small subject forever, but I'm also not going to drop a subject until I know that they've gotten that particular habit in place or that particular system installed in their business and it's working and we both know that it's working.
And that's good thing to have, as reflecting back and as we're about to wrap up our segment, being able to help put that system in place, know that it's working, putting together the actionable steps, and being able to digest that information that they're hearing into a plan moving forward. And that information within itself is worth its weight of gold. And I know, Chris, you've been doing this for quite a number of years, and you have the experience to be able to help, business owners move things forward. But how can our listeners learn more about you and your services if they're interested in working with you?
Well, and give me a call. Our number is 912-200-8100. Got that number because it's really easy to remember. Uh, it, it our website is actionmanagementpros.com. You can schedule a consultation right on the website or send us an email at info@actionmanagementpros.com. And we're happy to help anybody who has goals that they want to achieve.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate it, Chris. Audience, make sure you reach out to Chris and take advantage of his insights and wisdom. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast.
That'd be great. I'd be happy to come back. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
No problem, Chris. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. Don't forget to follow and leave your comments, and then tune in next time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Blueprint Boost for Contractors. We hope you found today's insights and strategies valuable for your contracting business. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring content that truly matters.